you don't have number one in your glass already, go ahead and get number one in your glass. And we are going to go ahead and get started and jump right in. So we're blind tasting. How many of you have blind tasted before? Just give us a show of hands. If you've ever blind tasted before. If you have not blind tasted before, that is perfectly all right. We're here to kind of help you through the process. What is blind tasting? Blind tasting is analyzing a wine, observing a wine without knowing what varietal it is, what region it's from, what year it is, or what producer it is. So there's no prejudice whatsoever. You're just tasting the wine to analyze objectively if you like it, characteristics about it. Most important is if you like it. But there are other reasons to analyze wine with a blind tasting as well. Looking for quality, attempting to decipher the regions or grapes. We have a cool game in our store called Somify. If you really like blind tastings, it's kind of a board game map of blind tasting, and you can get a group of people together. Everybody bring a bottle, have some fun that way. Tonight, specifically, we have an agenda. You're trying to find grape variety and style. We'll get into style a little bit more. We also want to look at what regions they're from. So there is no wrong answer. Even if you're wrong, it's not a wrong answer. So don't be afraid. Put all your questions in the chat function. Put all of your guesses in the chat function at the end. We'll add everything up. We'll kind of see where everyone is. And there are no dumb questions and there are no wrong answers in wine. And I say that with all honesty because a lot of people think that there's, the right way to speak or the right terms. And yes, there is, in literature, there are several levels of professionalism, if you will, in literature. Same thing with wine. Right now, we just want to communicate. We want to communicate at the base level about what these wines are, what they taste like, your perceptions of them, and at the end of the day, the most important, whether you like them or not. So there's 5 S's involved in wine tasting, specifically with blind tasting, but this can carry over to all tastings that you have of wine. You want to look at the wine, you want to look at the color. This is usually done against a white background, laying it towards the rim of the glass so that you're tilting it so that the wine kind of goes towards the very edge of the glass. This tells you the color, also shows you the transparency of the wine. So if wine number 1, we were looking at it to judge its color, it is a reddish purple, very translucent. You can see almost right through it. The next thing you want to do is swirl. The reason that we swirl wine is to incorporate oxygen into the glass and into the wine itself. Oxygen is the enemy of wine, but in small amounts, it is the friend of wine. So if you have a lot of oxygen that the wine is exposed to, the wine goes bad, turns to vinegar, or starts to turn to vinegar. You need some bacteria to help it along to truly be vinegar. But wine will make oxygen age and age prematurely if it's introduced in large quantities. In small quantities, it's good. It helps the wine express itself. It helps the wine age properly over a long term. So as with most things in life, a small amount good, a large amount bad. Sniff. Get your nose deep in there. I mean, get it really in there. I've gotten wine up my nose at this juncture of wine tasting before. Yes, I was a little aggressive and I do have a big nose and it kind of went right up there. It's happened a couple times. It doesn't happen very often, but don't be afraid to really stick it in there and get some big whiffs. Hopefully you haven't gotten coronavirus and you still have your taste and smell. And it's very important because smell is very much a part of our tasting experience. If you've ever been sick or had a cold and you're stuffy and you've eaten food or you've gone out and you've had some wine, it becomes really difficult to get the fullness of the flavor because you're olfactory senses are blocked, and it mutes the taste senses. So that's why we sniff. You kind of want to look for a couple things. You want to look for fruits that you may recall. You want to look for herbs. You want to look for earth. You want to look for umami. You want to look for other food flavors, animal fats, bacon, jerky, stuff like that. And that's kind of what you're looking for. Our memory is very different, and all of our senses are tied to memory. So when you are smelling in here and you get cherries, you're not actually smelling cherries, but you're remembering the smell of cherries. And those compounds that are emitted in the fermentation process, those chemical compounds, they come together to mimic flavors that we're used to on our senses and on our palate. Those components aren't actually in there. There's no cherries in there. There's no sage in the wine. There's no oranges in the wine. There's no bacon in the wine. But those flavors are linked to our senses because of the memories that we have when we taste those actual flavors. And the chemical compounds that are created during the fermentation process are what leads to those flavors being in wine. And it's just such an amazing miracle, honestly, that you can take grapes and yeast, and when they ferment, they create flavors like this that you get in other foods, that you get in your other aspects of life in your culinary journey. And it just goes to show you that wine and food were intrinsically linked from the beginning. They were meant to go together. They mimic each other. And in my mind, it's the grand design of wine. After that, we're going to sip. Now comes the fun part. Swirl, sniff, then sip. Now, when you're drinking wine, especially when you're tasting wine, you want to swish it around in your mouth for a good 10, 15 seconds. Treat it like mouthwash. Get it into all of the different parts of your mouth, because there's different taste perceptions in different areas of our mouth. Where you taste sweet is not the same place that you taste salty, is not the same place that you taste umami, is not the same place that you taste savory. They're all located in different areas. And so to get the fullness of the flavor of the wine that you're tasting, you really want to swish it around for a long, long, long time. And then the very last, most important S in our 5 S's, savor. Savor the wine. I can still taste the wine that we just had. So vibrant, so many flavors, so delicious. And now we're going to get into analyzing these wines and this wine in particular. So, oh man, I forgot about the arrows. Aaliyah, I blew it, and I am so bad at these.
Dude, it's my one
I know.
slide deck with all of the transitions.
I know. So Aaliyah's amazing with our Google decks, I guess you call them, Google slide decks she puts together. And she put together some really cool animations, and I botched the first one, but I'm going to try really hard not to botch the rest of the surprises that she has along the way.
I promise the only other slide with transitions is our reveal.
And it's a great reveal.
So
all right, real quick. Old world versus new world, something that we want to hit on real quick as we're starting to talk about styles. So remember, you're trying to guess the grape varietals, and you're trying to guess the styles of these wines. Style is a relatively new idea in wine. Most people for their wine careers and journeys have gotten used to memorizing grapes, varietals, the names of grapes, Cabernet, Pinot Noir, Syrah, Malbec, Merlot, Grenache, all of those things that we'll get into in just a moment. And those things do matter. There are intrinsic qualities to each grape, and it does matter, but style supersedes all things. It supersedes the grape varietal, and it supersedes the country that it's from, old world or new world. Technically, new world wine regions are wine regions that have a recent emergence. Think of South America, think of North America, think of South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. That's what we would consider a new world wine region, relatively new in the grand scheme of the earth. Old world wine regions, Spain, Italy, France, Portugal, places in the old world represented by that yellow on the map. And then ancient, which is this Eastern European bloc, kind of the Czechoslovakia and Turkey. What else?
Georgia.
Georgia, thank you.
Croatia.
Croatia, yes. So some of those ancient wine worlds. And then for our discussion, we want to stop using old world and new world as it refers to region. We want to extract modern and traditional and natural winemaking styles. We're not really going to touch on natural today because we don't have any natural wines in our lineup today, but we will do natural wines quite a bit through the year. As you know, it's a huge passion of ours. But what a lot of people refer to as old world style wines, we want to call traditional wines because it takes the geographic confusion out of the equation. Old world is a region, France, Italy, and Spain, but it's also a style that has emerged that we're going to call traditional. And it means lighter bodied, lower alcohol, more restrained, more elegant, less new oak, and traditional fermentation. Those are very, very important for our categorizations in fermented. And then the modern style is what we would refer to as that new world style. So the style that started in the New World in California, in Australia, in South America, bigger, richer, higher alcohol. Those have more to do with the style than they do where it's coming from. You can have traditional wines in the old world and the new world, and you can have modern wines in the old world and in the new world. And that's kind of what we want to hone in on here for our discussion. And really, as we move forward in fermented, this has always been a core of our philosophy of wine. And we've just kind of helped you get there without actually teaching you that philosophy. So now we want to start teaching you that philosophy so that you can understand why you like the wines that you like. And we see distinctly different styles and different preferences in wine drinkers. And there is no right or wrong in these things. So let's talk about grapes for a minute. We just talked about style. We've got to figure that out. Now we're going to talk about grapes. So we're trying to narrow down for our discussion and for our guesswork, if you will, because really at the end of the day, that's what blind tasting is. It's guessing which wines you think these are based on education and experience in the past. So we have the noble grapes, and we're just doing reds tonight, so we're not going to talk about these down here at the bottom. And Aaliyah, you lied. You do have one more animation as well.
I was just remembering that. My greatest apologies.
For tonight, we're going to focus on only 4 of the noble red varietals to try to make it easy for you. We're just wading into this. For some of you, it's your first time. We don't want to overwhelm you with having to choose from 200 different red grape varietals. So we're just going to choose from 4 different red grape varietals. And the ones that we're focusing on tonight are Grenache, Pinot Noir, Syrah, and Malbec. That doesn't mean that you're going to know which one is which right off the bat, but it could be one of these 4 grapes. Now, you've already tried wine number 1. So as you're sipping the rest of this wine, we're going to start talking about these different varietals. Pinot Noir, typically light body. Now, this is always typical of the grape, not always every expression. There are exceptions to every rule. These are the typical characteristics of these grapes. Pinot Noir, generally light to medium body, generally soft tannins, generally lower in alcohol, generally red fruit characteristics and earth, strawberries, cherries, raspberry, a little bit of cola, mushroom, clove, underbrush, earth, all of those things. And a lot more that we can add to that list as well. Pomegranate sometimes in there, blood orange sometimes in there. Pinot Noir can be a very diverse and differ greatly based on where it's grown and what style it's made into. Grenache, also known as warm weather Pinot, shares a lot of similar characteristics to Pinot Noir. Generally medium to full body. Generally medium tannins, if there are any. Alcohol, it can range 13.5 Grenache can get super ripe, so it can get up to 16% alcohol. Alcohol and ripeness are hand in hand when it comes to talking about them. The higher the sugar level of the grape, the higher the alcohol, because that's what we convert, the yeast convert to make the alcohol, take the sugar, convert it into alcohol, fermentation. Malbec, generally medium to full body. Tannin can be medium to high. Alcohol, 13.5 to 15, sometimes even 16% on Malbecs. Aromas and flavor, you get some darker flavors in here, red plum, some blackberry, sometimes vanilla. That usually comes from the oak treatment, tobacco, coca, cacao, chocolate, and then Syrah, another full-bodied grape, usually generally really full. Tannin, again, can be medium to high. That's based on the skins and what it naturally carries for tannin structure. You have alcohol levels that can range from 13.5 to 15 and even into the 16s for Syrah as well. Black and blue fruits, violets, telltale of Syrah, pepper, spice, tobacco, also sometimes smoked meats, jerky, that kind of flavor profile. Mystery wine number 1. So, mystery wine number 1. Let's look at the color first. What do we see? Again, that reddish purple color, translucent. You can almost see right through it. What do you smell on the nose? And feel free to put these in the chat function as well. Leah, feel free to jump on and help me out with these also.
Yes.
I get raspberry in this.
I initially got a lot of a bit more of like a gaminess, like a bacon fat or a some sort of like fattiness to it. But yeah, they're definitely really bright red fruit. But also like oh, we're just talking smell right now. Yes.
Yeah, I get a little bit of spice as well. I can't figure out quite what it is. Maybe clove, a little gasoline. Now, Frank, surprisingly enough, this is the lowest alcohol wine on the tasting. So we're tasting in order of alcohol, and we're at about 13%. I think what it might be is violet or floral that is kind of giving off that alcoholic aroma almost, woody, blackberry. All right, and then taste.
Delicious.
Mm-hmm.
You get a lot more of that spice.
Yeah, a lot of spice. You know, talking about tannins, great question. When we're talking about tannin, we're talking about that finish of this wine specifically. Of all the wines that we're going to taste tonight, this has the most tannin. So if you're trying to figure out tannin, this is the best one to latch onto. Definitely bigger flavor than the color would let on to. You know, looking at this, I would think Pinot Noir just from the appearance, but it is definitely not a Pinot Noir flavor profile. It's big, it's rich, it's dense, it's got some structure. And then again, back to the tannin, that's what we call structure. It's the finish of the wine. Tannin is natural in the skins, seeds, and stems of the grapes. So if you ate a wine grape, not a Welch's table grape, if you ate a wine grape, it would be very bitter and it would be very dry on the palate. And that's what the tannin is. Tannin is natural. Tannin is good. Tannin is not naturally bad or bad for you. And it's not what gives you headaches. Those are sulfites. So tannins are present in a lot of wines, and it really relates a lot to the style as well. The old world style wines, the traditional wines, are generally going to have more tannin than their new world or modern counterparts. The modern counterparts are going to be a little bit softer and smoother on the back end. The reason it's important are for a couple things. Long-term aging of wine. Tannic wines that have balance of fruit and alcohol and tannin and acid will age longer better and will change over time. Wines that don't have tannin don't generally age as well or age as long. If it's softer and smoother and it has lower acid and higher alcohol, it's not going to age as well, and it's not going to change as much over the course of time either. And so you don't get the nuances that come with aging a wine that has the balance of the acid, the tannin, and the alcohol. It's also a personal preference and a very important one. Some people like tannin, some people don't like tannin. It's okay if you don't like tannin. If you don't like the way this wine finishes, and as we get into the softer wines and the progression of the tasting, you like those better, it's important to let us know in the store that you like softer wines and you don't like tannic wines. And we always ask that question if you come in asking about red wine. So don't fear if you forget. We will ask you how you like the finish of your wine. And this is what we're talking about. Do you like it tannic or do you like it soft and smooth? If you like it both, we'll ask you which one you feel like that night. If you lean one way or the other, then we'll help you avoid the wines in the room that you may not like, and we'll help you find the wines in the room that you probably will like. And then the finish, tannic. We covered that already. And each one of these wines will have a different finish that we'll talk about a little bit. So in the back of your mind, be thinking about what you think this wine might be. Take a couple seconds to reflect. I'll back up to that slide real quick so you can reference it as you're thinking about the flavors of this wine. And then write down your guesses, write down your thoughts, and then we'll put them in the chat function. Actually, I don't think we do put that in the chat function. We'll just talk about them at the very end, and we'll find out what your favorite is, because it would probably take too long for you to put all four of the wines that you're guessing and then to go through everybody. So just keep that to yourself. For now, we can get to it at the very end. But write down your answers and what you think that this might be based on this slideshow, or based on that slide. All right, mystery wine number 2. We're going to go through the exact same thing. Aaliyah, anything to add? Anything I glossed over? Anything that I've missed up to now?
I don't believe so. Just, I will say for the class, I am in a similar boat to you in that 3 of these wines I am also tasting for the very first time. So we are experiencing this fun moment together, and that's a bonding thing for us. So
absolutely. All right. Pour myself a little bit of number 2. Get it in your glass as well if you don't have it already. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. What's that?
I was just saying, let's stick our noses in.
Mm-hmm. Stick our noses in. Look at the appearance. We're gonna look at this one. So this one, it's about the same hue, that reddish purple hue, but it's got a little bit more cloudiness, which is telling me it's definitely unfined and unfiltered, which when we're talking about styles is going to automatically lead you more towards that traditional style. The traditional wines tend to not fine and not filter their wines. A lot of old school winemakers say that when you filter a wine, you're stripping the soul of that wine. They are adamantly against any manipulations, and that includes fining and filtering. So that would lead me to kind of start to think about an old world style of wine, a traditional style of wine, as we're calling it. Get that nose in there. I get brighter fruits than we got on the last one even.
Still a little bit of like an animal fat, but it's much gentler and less obvious to me. But of course, yeah. Mud. Frank, you get mud?
Yeah, there's definitely some earth in here. I'm thinking like raspberries that fell off during a rainstorm and then got trampled on in the mud. So you've got the raspberries, you've got the earth, you've got the rain, you've got that kind of freshness to it as well. And maybe they just started fermenting, like some wild yeast came in and you have that alcoholic fermentation happening.
I love that imagery. That's like the beginning of a Taylor Swift song.
Cinnamon, great call. Yes, definitely some cinnamon on here. It just smells fresh and alive. All right, now into the taste.
By the way, when Adam and I are doing that and we're making all that noise, it's not just to be like crazy, it's to allow oxygen into our mouth. And I know that seems like a super pretentious thing to do, but that's part of the experience. So that's how you can best open up a wine, particularly if you didn't decant or aerate in advance, sucking a little air in between your teeth and then swishing it around in your mouth is how you get the full wine experience, the full sip experience. And sip one is never indicative of the experience of your glass throughout it. So make sure you give a wine at least 3 sips before you judge.
Yeah, never trust the first sip. Man. All right, so there is some tannins in this one as well. Not as much as the last one. A little higher acid, a little less tannin, a little more bright red fruit.
Whew.
Man.
That is pretty.
It's really pretty. And so here we have back here, we're going to check out our slide deck again. Look at some of the aromas and flavors that we've listed. And again, this isn't always indicative or always correct, but in general, this is where we're going to land for Pinot, for Grenache, for Malbec, and for Syrah. So look at those. Think about this wine. Think about the flavors you're tasting. Think about the flavors that we've talked about. And then
forgive Aaliyah a little bit because I only had so much space to give flavors and aroma, and there are a lot of adjectives we could have used.
There are indeed. Man, that's really yummy.
I'm very happy to meet this wine.
Yeah, I will say this wine is brand new to us specifically for this tasting. The other wines we've had in the store for a little bit of time. We love them all, but this one, we just got a case of it. And as with all of the wines, they are limited. We are out of one of the wines already. We had our last couple bottles reserved for this tasting, and it is no more. We may be able to get a little bit more of it down the road, but yum is all I have to say about this. All right, make your guesses. Finish your wine. And we're going to get into wine number 3. Yum, yum. I found a new favorite, I think. One of the other things that you want to do in wine tasting, when you're blind tasting and you're trying to figure out what wine it is work backwards through the process of elimination. Think about the wines that it's not. And so even though we only have 4 right now, try to rule out the ones that you don't think it is to get to the ones that you think it might be. Just like if you're taking a multiple choice test. Sometimes you may not know the exact right answer, but you know it's not A and you know it's not D. So your guess is now between B and C, and you have a 50% chance of guessing correctly versus a 25% chance of guessing correctly if you don't eliminate those other 2. Blind tasting is guessing. Anybody who says that they can blind taste 100% of every grape and tell you what it is full of shit. The people that go around and try to say, I can name any grape from any region, it's bullshit. It's just not possible. Blind tasting, especially in the sommelier community, has been set up in a box instead of in the broad world of wine. If you're blind tasting for a sommelier test, there's only a certain amount of grapes that it can be. It's not going to be Plavix Mali from Croatia. It doesn't fit into their box. And so they narrow down the box so that it makes it easier to guess correctly. If you look at the 2,000 grape varietals that there are in the world, there's no way that you could identify all of those given regional differences, stylistic differences, winemaker practices, vintage variations. And so we want to narrow it down and we want to try to get it as close as possible, but this is not an exact science, and it is absolutely a guessing game. Some people are better at the guessing game than others, just like some people are better at picking football winners than others, or picking winning horses or winning stocks. But it's the same philosophy and it's the same kind of mindset. At the end of the day, it is a guessing game. All right. I feel like it's definitely not Chardonnay or Riesling. Yes, absolutely. That is the perfect thing to eliminate first. You know it's not white, you know it's not rosé, and you know it's not bubbles. So well done. All right, I got to finish this, and I'm going to get wine number 3 in my glass. And you should too. All right. Let's look at it first. All right, already I can tell darker in color, more purple, which would lead me to believe more extraction, probably higher alcohol, and probably a little bit more richness, just based on the color. We're going to swirl. We're going to sniff.
Oh, geez, I'm suddenly aware that I can't remember which one was in my glass. Did anybody else see if I put the third one in my glass or not? I'm just kidding.
I did not.
Okay.
Higher alcohol, I can get it in the nose. Darker fruits. Aaliyah and I were talking about something today that not a lot of people realize. Alcohol and fruit profile are very intrinsically related. The higher the alcohol, usually the darker the fruit flavor profile. And so if you're going from lighter bodied to fuller bodied, or lower alcohol to higher alcohol, you're generally going from red fruit to dark fruit, blue and black fruits. It is a characteristic of certain grapes as well. Some grape varietals have darker fruits inherently than other grape varietals, but it really has a lot to do with the alcohol and the amount of sugar that the grape gets on the vine. As the grape ripens, it changes in structure of sugar and acid. And as the sugar goes up and the acid goes down, the finishing fruit profile of the wine is going to be darker the higher the alcohols. So we're getting into higher alcohols, and we'll see if that translates into a difference in flavor profile of whatever grape this is.
This one to me is a lot like toastier, like kind of like a toasted wood or toast, unbuttered toast. Just kind of a toastier, as opposed to if the last one was more wet earth, this one definitely feels just a little more cooked is really not the right word. Toasted. Anybody else?
I think that's probably from the oak treatment more than anything, which is one thing that you want to look at when you're blind tasting as well. Oak treatment and any practices in the winery are going to affect the flavor profile of the finished wine. And so this one has tannin on it, but this is more of a wood tannin than it is a natural grape tannin. And there's a difference in the tannins and the grippiness of the tannins. This one, even though it's a softer, sweeter tannin, it's a little bit grippier at the same time. You get that vanilla, you get that kind of vanilla bean on here. And then with that toastiness from the oak as well, it's definitely more of a wood tannin than the other two wines that we tasted. It also does have that darker fruit, getting that kind of boysenberry. I'm getting a little bit of molasses in there too somewhere that I'm not sure exactly where that's coming from. But definitely deeper, darker, richer. And I'm going to back up to that. There we go. Our characteristic slide. I get like a Chinese 5 spice or allspice. I can't tell which one it is, but there's one of those in this wine as well. I think it's more of an allspice kind of ginger, almost like a Jamaican jerk flavor, which is going to be coming from the wood as well. All of those characteristics are more wood treatment characteristics than they are characteristics of the grape itself.
So per the mystery, that could be any of these grapes.
You know, I'd probably rule out Pinot Noir on this one. But other than that, yeah, it could be anything. Sorry, we're not helping you out much.
We're not supposed to. That's part of the fun.
I know. So think about style as well. Is this modern style or is this traditional style? What were the first two that we tasted through? And again, styles. We'll go back to that slide real quick so you can. Oh, I went right past it. All right, so old world, traditional style, lighter bodied, more restrained, lower in alcohol. New world, fuller bodied, bolder fruit flavors, higher in alcohol. Also, traditional old world, not much new oak. New world, modern, a lot more new oak. That's another part of those styles and how the finished wine comes out.
Adam, we did have a good question in the chat about, can we talk about legs?
Yes.
Or whatever we prefer to call it, and what that means when you see it on your glass.
Yes. Legs is an indication of alcohol. It's not an exact indication of alcohol, but it is an indication of alcohol. The slower the legs go down the glass, the legs are when you swirl this wine, you're going to have little legs of wine form. The slower the legs go down, the lower the alcohol. The faster the legs go down. Wait, did I say lower alcohol or higher alcohol? The slower it goes down, the higher the alcohol. The faster it goes down, the lower the alcohol. And so that'll give you an indication of the alcohol, but you can also get that indication on the palate and on the nose of the wine as well. All right. Think about what you think wine number 3 is. Get back to that slide real quick. Write down your thoughts, your guesses, and then we're going to move right along into wine number 4. Now, again, at the end of the day, the most important thing for this tasting is figuring out if you like the wines or not. And then based on that, we can explore lots of other wines in the store as well. That's the fun. That's where it gets really, really fun. When you can identify the styles and the grapes of wines that you like, then that makes exploring wine become a whole new adventure, because you can explore without the fear of drinking wines that you don't like. We want you to get a wine that you're going to enjoy every single time you come into Fermented. And you're not going to enjoy every single wine in Fermented because we got a lot of different wines. Little secret I'll share with you, I don't enjoy every wine that we have in Fermented. Somebody enjoys the wines that I have in Fermented. That's why they're there. I don't buy just based on my flavor profile. There's a lot of people in the world, and I've been around long enough to know that not everybody shares my personal flavor preference. And so we look for families, and we look to have a variance of different styles, different regions, different grapes, different flavor profiles, so that we can have something for everyone. And that really is our goal. We want to have a wine for every single wine drinker, even though we naturally bent towards natural wines, no pun intended. We have modern wines and we have traditional wines. At the end of this, I'll tell you what my least favorite style of wine is, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some out there that I enjoy. But again, it comes down to a style, just like art. There's certain art that I don't like. Music, there's certain music that I don't like. Food, there's not much food that I don't like. But when it comes to art, and that's what wine is, perception is everything, and your own perception is not wrong. So learn to figure out what you like and what you don't like and why that is, and then build a relationship with us so that you can get wines in that style every time you come in the store. All right, wine number 4.
Well, and y'all can feel okay. I don't like every wine Adam likes either. So this is an open book of love and acceptance. So
absolutely. I'm not right. I just know what I like. And I've learned to figure out how to find what other people like.
Throw right and wrong out of it. If you like it, that's right for you. And that's what we need to take away.
Yep. So getting into the color on this, more purple, the darkest of all the wines that we've looked at, intense color, which leads me to assume that it's probably going to be higher alcohol, bigger, richer. All those things go together. Color, alcohol, richness, boldness, weight, body, whatever you want to call it. You swirl the legs. Yep. Into the nose, blackberry, blueberry, vanilla, little tobacco, little cocoa.
Pie. This smells like pie.
Blackberry pie.
Blackberry pie.
With vanilla ice cream.
Yes, exactly that. And you're by a fireside and you have your favorite plush blanket with you. If you have a pet, they're nearby. Maybe you have some snacks. Like, that's what this is.
Yep. It's gigantic. It is. What do you got on that screen, Frank? I'm trying to see what you're pairing it with. Hershey's Kisses. Nice. Yeah, that's perfect. It is, man. It's high alcohol, high octane, full of flavor. When people come in and they say we want a really intense, rich, full-bodied wine, this is what we're going to show you because that is just what that is. It's a big, rich, gigantic wine, high alcohol, intense, rich. If we were comparing all 4 of these wines to music styles, this would be your heavy metal. The very first wine that we drank would be your jazz. And that's kind of the spectrum of flavor profiles that we're looking at in the wines here. Finish, much softer and smoother. Literally almost no tannin on the back end of the wine. Just juicy fruit. Again, that blackberry, it feels like I just bit into a baked blackberry pie. All that juice kind of oozing out. Long finish. Very, very well-made wine. Finish is one thing that a lot of people use to determine the quality of the wine. The longer the finish is usually an indicator of a really well-made, well-crafted wine. The flavors just continue to linger and go on in your palate even after you've finished tasting that wine. So let's get back here to our different characteristics that we're looking at. So again, looking at these, we talked about really dark blues, black fruits, vanilla, tobacco, cocoa, and the most powerful of all the wines that we've tasted through. And if you've been paying attention to styles through what we've been talking about, you should probably be able to figure out what style of wine this is, even easier than figuring out what region and what varietal it is. And we really want people to stop thinking about regions and varietals and start thinking about style more, because style is going to be more of an indicator of what you like and what you don't like than region or varietal. You know, we could line up 10 Cabernets in front of you and you might like 5 of them and you might hate 5 of them, depending on what style they are. But if you say you like big, rich, modern reds, and we line up 10 big, rich, modern reds in front of you, you're probably going to like all of them. Doesn't matter what varietal or what region they're from, because of the style. If that's your style, you're going to like a higher percentage of wines than if you go by region or varietal. Region and varietal can be very misleading because you don't know the style unless you've tasted the wine, or unless you know the producer and what they believe in winemaking style. And so that's really what we're trying to teach you in this exercise, and really what we want you to gain from the relationship of Fermented. Up until this point, we've kind of been doing that for you, but we want to start talking about it more so that you can understand why the Fermented experience is different than the experiences you get at other places around town. And it's because we focus more on style and try to help you figure out what style you like. Then we focus on varietal, region. When you come in, we don't ask you what varietal or region you like to drink. We ask you about light to medium, full bodied. We ask you about finish, tannic, or soft and smooth. And from those clues, we can kind of guess initially what style you're attracted to. And then based on some of the wines that you like, the names, that gives us an indication of what style you like as well. So hopefully you've figured out all of the wines and you got them all 100% correct. And if you did, we'll give you a fermented koozie next time you're in the store. And even if you didn't, if you want a fermented koozie, anytime you come in the store, just ask us for one and we'll give you one. And if you've been on a Zoom tasting, don't tell your friends to ask for one, only if you've been on a Zoom tasting. So this is where we want to know what your favorite wine is from the tasting. Not knowing what varietal it is, not knowing what style it is, not knowing what region it's from, not knowing anything about it. From the blind tasting, which was your favorite wine? And if you could only drink one of these wines for the rest of the night, which one would you choose to drink? Put those answers in the chat function. Aaliyah's going to tabulate them. We're going to see who the winner of the wine blind tasting was from a popularity standpoint. And then we're going to do our big reveal. I'm going to go through the chat function real quick just to make sure that I didn't miss anything.
I think, Adam, the big question that we haven't covered is, where would Cabernet Sauvignon sit on the spectrum of grapes that we've talked about? Number 5, Steven, you mixer.
Very, very similarly to Malbec and Syrah. So when you're looking at grapes, there are fuller bodied grapes, things like Cabernet, Merlot, Malbec, Syrah, Zinfandel. Those grapes have a lot of similarities when you're looking at the blind tasting, especially depending on what style they are. I will say that in general, it's easier to identify traditional styles of grapes versus modern styles of grapes, because when you get into the higher alcohols, all of the grapes kind of start to taste the same, whether it's Cab, whether it's Merlot, whether it's Malbec, whether it's Syrah. So you get more of the nuances of the individual grapes, the closer towards traditional that you go in the spectrum of style. But Cabernet is going to be similar to Malbec, similar to Merlot, similar to Syrah. We talk a lot about those grapes, and we use those grapes interchangeably a lot when we're talking to people and trying to get them to branch out. You know, because we have a small store, we might only have 3 or 4 Cabernets in each section, but we've got a lot of wines that you'll probably like if you can open your mind up beyond the Cabernet grape and think about the styles. But Cabernet, you know, traditionally can be very tannic. You think about Bordeaux, you think about some old world cabs or some traditional cabs coming out of California and coming out of Tuscany. They can be very tannic and they can be very elegant. Malbec and Syrah can be the same way, or they can be very full-bodied and they can be very rich. And again, going back to style, not to beat that to death, but I do want to beat that to death, because if you like modern wines, you'll like modern Cabernet, but if you don't like traditional wines, you won't like traditional Cabernet. So just knowing that the wine is made from Cabernet doesn't tell you if you're going to like that wine or not. It's more to do with style than it is region or varietal. All right, Aaliyah, do we have a clear winner?
We do, and it's number 2.
Number 2.
Number 2. So our complete newbie that we brought in specifically for this tasting. So we love that you guys love it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty awesome. I'm excited about it too. Wonderful, wonderful. Now,
the fun.
Who is ready for the big reveal?
Should we ask people what they think each one is, or is that just like dragging it out?
Yes. Let's do it one at a time, though, so it doesn't become too much of a cluster. Wait, we didn't do them one at a time, did we? We did all 4 together.
For the picture, yes. So don't press any buttons.
Okay.
So what do we think number 1 was? Put it in the chat.
Yes.
What do we think that wine number 1 in terms of grape variety was? So we've got Grenache, we've got Syrah, question mark. We've got Syrah, we've got Malbec, Syrah, Pinot. Good mix. Okay, love it. So now what do we think number 2 was? Everybody's favorite. What do we think that was? Pinot, Syrah, Grenache. Pinot, Grenache. Great, so we think it's either Pinot or Grenache. And more Grenache. Okay, great. Number 3. What do we think number 3 was? Syrah. Frank says Syrah. Grenache, Malbec, Pinot, Malbec. So basically, we are not in agreement. Syrah.
On anything.
So basically, on any of these. That's okay. That's part of the learning process. Okay, and then number 4. What do we think number 4 was? Okay, Malbec. Oh, someone said number 3, Malbec. So red. Correct, Lisa. It is. It is definitely red. Malbec, Pinot. Okay, so I think the majority seem to think that number 4 is Malbec. So who's ready to know?
Drum roll. That was a terrible drum roll, but
three button clicks, I think, for the reveal, Adam. What? What does that say? What?
This was our cruel and unusual twist to tonight's tasting. Every single wine that you tasted tonight was a Syrah. Different countries, different regions, and definitely different styles. Again, really trying to get y'all to think outside of the varietal and regional boxes and really thinking about styles of wine and styles of wine that you like. So the very first wine that we tasted is a Syrah from the Rhone Valley in France. This is the Yves Couliron Les Vignes d'Acaux from the Southern Rhone region, 100% Syrah, super traditional producer. Really, really beautiful example of French Syrah. Number 2 is a Syrah from the Santa Cruz Mountains in California. So Santa Cruz sits below San Francisco Bay, right above Monterey. And it's a really cool wine region, very cool climate. And a lot of the producers are making wine in a traditional or an old world style of Syrah. And then the third one is from Carneros, and it's a typical California style Syrah, bigger, richer. This is where we're getting into those modern profiles. And then the Torbreck Barossa Valley Shiraz, Syrah and Shiraz, the same grape. Shiraz is what they call it in Australia. Pretty much Syrah, the rest of the world, except for a couple people in California. And it is the most modern in style that we tasted. So the first 2 were traditional Syrahs, one from California, one from France. The last 2 were modern Syrahs, one from California, one from Australia. Now, for those of you who liked number 2 the best, you like traditional. For those of you who liked number 1 the best, you like traditional. If you liked 3 or 4 the best, you're a modern wine drinker. Again, throw Syrah out of there because these are all Syrahs. A lot of people, again, you get caught up on, I didn't like that Merlot, or I didn't like that Zinfandel, or I didn't like that Chardonnay. So I'm just going to throw them all out. I'm just going to stick to Cabernet, or I'm going to stick to Merlot, or I'm going to stick to what I know. But really, figure out the style that you like. Come see us at Fermented, and we can explore all kinds of regions, all kinds of grapes, and it makes it so much fun. Yep, Aaliyah's putting in prices into the chat function. Again, number 2, limited, we have a little bit of it to go around. Number 1, limited, we have a little bit of it to go around. Number 3 is the one that we're out of currently. And then number 4 is plentiful, and we keep it in stock pretty regularly. We also have other Syrahs. So if you want to try a different Syrah that we didn't taste on this tasting, you can do that. If you like the Big Basin Syrah, we also carry their GSMV blend. If you liked the Couilleron Syrah, we've got a couple other French Syrahs that you can try at different price points. We have the Lunar Apogee, the GSM mix. Based on these wines and which one you liked the most, we can explore a whole world of wines that are going to be similar in flavor profile to these wines. So I hope you guys had fun. I hope that it was a shock to see that these were all 4 the same varietal, because it just shows you how different one varietal can be from region to region, but more specifically from style to style. You have 2 from California, but completely different styles of California Syrahs. And that's what we're about at Fermented. We really want to help you in this journey of exploring wine, of enjoying wine, of understanding wine for yourself in a fashion that's a little bit more fun. You don't have to learn points. You don't have to learn tasting profiles. You don't have to learn regions. You don't have to learn varietals. You don't have to learn vintage charts. All you have to learn is which style you gravitate towards, natural, traditional, or modern. And then within that style, we can explore a lot of different wines, and we always have new wines. It might not be Cabernet this time. It might be something else that you haven't heard of, but in the same style that you like. So happy Wednesday. Check out the tasting schedule for the rest of the upcoming tastings. Next week, we've got chocolate and wine pairing, but we've got a limited number of chocolates. So if you want to get on that one, I would get on it quick. We've got about 30 bags of chocolate that can go along with the wine tastings. And I know some people are going to have some groups over and do some full bottle kits. So make sure you get on that one. I think we're going to put it on the website tomorrow, Aaliyah, or Friday.
Possibly Friday afternoon. We're just finalizing the best possible wines for your pairing purposes.
Yes.
So Friday afternoon.
Yep. If you want to reserve tasting, you can put it in the Slack function or chat function. I'm so used to saying Slack with our team. You can put it into the chat function, and we'll make sure that we reserve one for you when they do go on sale. And then after that, we've got Pacific Northwest and then Eastern Europe to wrap up our regional.
Reverse Eastern Europe will be the 17th. So that's going to be Germany, Austria, Croatia, and the country of Georgia. And then Pacific Northwest, which is Oregon and Washington, will be the 24th.
Beautiful. And then in April, we're going to let our team present their favorites in the store for that moment. And then in April, we're going to get back into our winemaker and guest Zoom series where we have some distributors, some importers, some winemakers come on with us so that you don't get tired of hearing me talk all the time. And just to bring a little perspective into the mix. So stay tuned for all those things. Check out the website. Remember, you can shop online. If you're not a wine club member, look into that because we curate our wine club specifically to the styles that we're talking about tonight. So if you're a modern wine drinker, we'll only give you modern wines. If you're a traditional wine drinker, we'll only give you traditional wines. And then you also have the option of adding different packages or changing packages in wine clubs. So check that out online on the website. We also help people find the best wedding wine. So if you know anybody getting married, send them our way. We've got great cheap wine as well. Private Zoom tastings in addition to the public Zoom tastings. And then hopefully within the next 6 months, we'll be able to start resuming our in-store tastings. We're patiently and constantly planning for the reopening of our in-store tastings. But until then, we'll continue to see you every Wednesday via Zoom, and then in the store when you come back for all of your favorites. So again, thank you. You guys are awesome. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being interested in great wine and in supporting families that we love. Bye, guys.
Bye.